Imagine someone followed you for a week, not to judge you, not to monitor you, simply to observe. What time you wake up, when you check your phone, what route you take to work, what videos you watch, what excuses you repeat, what goals you postpone. At the end of the week, they make a prediction, not about your future, about tomorrow. What time you'll wake up, what you'll eat, which apps you'll open, which tasks you'll avoid. And surprisingly, they would probably be correct. Not because they can see the future, because humans are remarkably predictable. We like to think of ourselves as spontaneous, independent, free. Yet much of daily life operates through repetition. The same thoughts, the same environments, the same behaviors, repeated so often that they become invisible. The question isn't whether you have habits. The question is whether your habits have quietly become an algorithm. Suppose I asked you to predict tomorrow. How much of it could you predict? Not the weather, not the stock market, yourself. What time will you wake up? What app will you open first? What route will you take? What will you eat? What will you postpone? Most people can answer these questions surprisingly well, which creates an unusual situation. You already know many of tomorrow's decisions before tomorrow arrives. The wake-up time, the coffee, the commute, the evening routine. If you can predict them, how many of them are truly being decided? Perhaps fewer than you think. Perhaps much of daily life isn't a series of decisions. It's the execution of a program that was written long ago, not by a single choice, but by repetition. The same actions, the same responses, the same patterns, repeated often enough that they no longer feel like choices at all. And that raises a more interesting question. If the program already exists, who wrote it? How does a behavior become a prediction? Imagine an AI model trained on only one person. You. Every day it receives new data. When you wake up, what you avoid, what you repeat, what you reward, what you ignore. Now imagine the model notices something. Every time discomfort appears, you delay. Every time boredom appears, you scroll. Every time stress appears, you seek distraction. At first, these are isolated observations. Then the pattern strengthens. Eventually, the model becomes confident, not because it understands you, because it understands your repetitions. The same thing happens inside human behavior. The brain is constantly collecting evidence, and every repeated action becomes a vote. A vote for what is normal, a vote for what is likely, a vote for what comes next. The algorithm doesn't need certainty. It only needs consistency, and consistency is surprisingly common. What if you are not the only one writing the code? Let's continue the investigation. Most people assume their behavior belongs entirely to them, but every algorithm learns from its environment, and so do humans. Consider two identical people. Same intelligence, same ambition, same potential. Now place them in different environments. One spends years around builders, creators, readers, people who start things. The other spends years around comfort, routine, low expectations, predictable outcomes. Given enough time, the differences begin to appear, not because one person changed overnight, because each environment supplied different training data. The conversations become different. The standards become different. The possibilities become different. And eventually, the predictions become different. The algorithm was never trained in isolation. It learned from everything around it. What if the algorithm isn't forecasting your future, but producing it? This may be the most important discovery in the case. Most people believe prediction and creation are separate processes. They are not. Imagine someone predicts you'll skip tomorrow's workout. Then you skip it. The prediction was correct, but something else happened. The behavior became slightly stronger. The probability increased. The next prediction became easier, then easier again. Over time, repeated predictions begin creating outcomes. The person who repeatedly learns becomes skilled. The person who repeatedly avoids becomes hesitant. The person who repeatedly saves becomes financially resilient. The person who repeatedly delays becomes trapped by delay. Eventually, the algorithm stops forecasting behavior. It starts manufacturing it, one day at a time, one repetition at a time, one decision at a time. The future begins to resemble the pattern that created it. If the algorithm is so accurate, why do some people suddenly change? Every investigation eventually encounters an anomaly, a case that shouldn't exist, a prediction that fails, a pattern that breaks. Human behavior has them too, because every now and then, someone does something completely unexpected. The lifelong smoker quits. The procrastinator starts. The spender begins saving. The quiet person speaks. The ordinary employee launches a business. From the outside, these changes appear sudden, almost random, but investigators know something important. Most breakthroughs look sudden only at the moment they become visible. The change often began much earlier. A different book, a different environment, a different conversation, a different decision repeated long enough to matter. The algorithm didn't change overnight. The training data changed, and eventually, the prediction changed with it. This reveals something interesting about human behavior. People often imagine their future is fixed, not because they believe it consciously, because repetition makes the future feel inevitable. But algorithms don't understand destiny. They understand evidence. Give them enough new evidence, and they begin reaching different conclusions. The same is true for human lives. The future is rarely rewritten by a single dramatic moment. It is rewritten when the pattern changes, and patterns are built one repetition at a time. At the beginning of this investigation, we asked a simple question. Why are humans so predictable? The answer was never a lack of intelligence, or a lack of ambition, or a lack of freedom. The answer was something quieter. Patterns. Patterns repeated so consistently that tomorrow often begins to resemble yesterday. The wake-up time, the route, the distractions, the excuses, the routines. Repeated often enough, they stop feeling like decisions and start behaving like code. Along the way, we discovered something else. The algorithm is not hidden inside a machine. It is hidden inside repetition. Every action becomes data. Every repetition becomes training. Every reward becomes instruction. And eventually, those instructions begin shaping outcomes. Most people imagine the future as a place they are heading toward. But the evidence suggests something different. The future is not merely waiting. It is being trained, right now, through ordinary decisions that rarely feel important. The most surprising discovery wasn't that the algorithm could predict your behavior. It was that you are helping build the model every day, whether you realize it or not. Every repeated action teaches it what to expect. Every repeated pattern tells it what is normal. Every repeated decision increases the probability of a particular future, which means tomorrow is not arriving empty. It is arriving with expectations. Expectations created by today's evidence. And perhaps that is why some futures appear inevitable, not because they were destined to happen, because they were rehearsed. For months, for years, sometimes for decades, before they finally arrived. Somewhere inside today's routine, tomorrow is already being calculated. The question is, what are you teaching it to expect?